Quiet is hard to find. All of us live surrounded by noise. Modern society is built around noise, so much so that we frequently buy headphones specifically designed to cancel out the noise around us so that we can, in turn, play our own noise.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now.
And it's not just the noise you hear. Noise has infected what we see, too. Status updates and constant activity are noise for the eyes, and in the age of scrolling Twitter timelines and ever-present notifications, I think that most of us, myself included, have forgotten what it means to be quiet. I've been fortunate enough to spend my 4 years of high school at a Catholic school in DC that also serves as a monastery, a rare place of quiet in a city full of noise. While I'm chatting with friends about the latest Marvel movie, the monks nearby are praying and contemplating, relatively free of outside distractions. I'm not religious myself, but wouldn't it be nice to experience life a little more like them? I wanted to find my own quietness. The problem is that school is, well, inherently distracting. I needed to find a monastery isolated from anything I'd known before if I truly wanted to find quiet. After consulting with a travel-savvy teacher and doing some internet research, I made plans to visit another Benedictine monastery, this one with nuns instead of monks, and located in the beautiful San Juan Islands of the Pacific Northwest. I figured if I was going to travel far, I might as well pick a place that was physically beautiful and serene, befitting of the mental experience I was hoping to receive. So I convinced my dad to book tickets for what I pitched as a graduation trip to celebrate me finishing high school. Getting there was not exactly serene, however. If you've ever flown a red-eye or had the misfortune of flying out of Dulles International Airport outside of DC, then you can probably relate to some of the stress my dad and I felt on the way.
Dulles International Airport. Please extinguish all smoking materials and refrain from smoking while in public areas of the terminal.
Also on board today's flight, we offer personal device entertainment. It is a free system.
After a long flight to Seattle-Tacoma Airport, we needed to take a late-night shuttle for 3 hours to the ferry landing at Anacortes, where we would catch a boat in the morning. But the shuttle ride was surprisingly pleasant, as at the window I witnessed the last rays of sun passing through shadowy outlines of myriad pine trees dotting the horizon. Morning at the motel as we waited for the scheduled ferry was peaceful, a nice contrast to the busy, noise-filled period of travel we'd woken from. I made a note to turn on Do Not Disturb on my phone before we boarded the ferry, as I prepared to forbid myself from visiting the noise-dominated world of social media and outside news for the next couple of days. If I was going to find quiet, I needed to be present in this place, in this moment. The view on the ferry ride was worth the hour and a half it took to actually get to the islands. Countless firs, distant snow-capped mountains, blue-gray sun-soaked waves, and near-perfect weather. I was starting to find quiet. It was a pleasant commute to the island on which we'd be spending the night. Orcas Island is geographically the largest of the San Juans, but it's not as dense as the flagship island of San Juan itself. We stayed on the quiet and peaceful East Sound, a less frequented and quieter side of Orcas Island. It was refreshing to walk around in the evening and look out at a calming view of water instead of the latest episode of Westworld. After some walking and dinner, it was time to rest. Tomorrow, we would visit the flagship island of San Juan. In the morning, we decided to rent bikes instead of paying the expensive taxi fare back to the ferry landing on Orcas. Even though the bike shop was closed on Sundays, the owner was around and sympathetically rented us bikes anyways. People are just really nice in the quiet San Juans. The ferry ride between islands is much shorter, so within half an hour of departing Orcas with our bikes, we'd arrived at Friday Harbor, the busy entrance to San Juan Island. There were only 3 hours between our ferry arriving at Friday Harbor and and the last one of the day, leaving in the afternoon to return to Orcas. So my dad and I decided to bike to the somewhat nearby American camp, since that was all we had time for. This was where American soldiers had occupied the island during a tense and years-long territorial debate between the US and Britain. Eventually, the two sides settled, and it was decided that the US border would contain the San Juan Islands. The only casualty during this period was an unlucky pig who strayed onto an angry and shotgun-armed American's farmland. Obscure and interesting history aside, the view was great, as the foliage and land of the island plainly receded to reveal a panoramic and all-encompassing view of the sea and territory around us. There were other people, but they were spread so far apart walking among the shore and tall grass that they were mostly hidden from sight. Being this alone was really special and relaxing in a way. While it was nice to get back to the hustle and bustle of Friday Harbor after being so isolated for a few hours, at the same time, I couldn't help but miss the lonely view. Friday Harbor was pleasant, but almost too much like home. I needed to get back to a more complete quiet. After ferrying and biking back to East Sound, we had a great dinner of local bay-caught oysters and an easy rest. The next morning marked our last day in the San Juans, and our arrival at the tiny and sparsely populated Shaw Island, where the Benedictine monastery I'd originally planned this trip around resided. A super friendly intern named Mike, helping the nuns with daily chores, picked us up and drove us from the ferry terminal to the place itself. We toured the grounds of the monastery and followed our guide Mike as he fed the animals. There were chickens, sheep, and llamas, and an elderly cow who couldn't move much anymore, but appreciated the food that it had to be delivered nonetheless. While I couldn't film the nuns out of respect for monastic privacy, I can tell you that meeting them was amazing. Here were experienced, hard-working women living largely on their own, tending to land and animals that provided them with many of their supplies and meals, who still had time and energy to invite a revolving door of guests and outsiders to join them. And these were not archetypical, sober, straight-faced figures betraying no emotion. These nuns were savvy, funny, and felt genuinely alive. As guests, we could easily appreciate the natural beauty of such a place, but it was Mother Hildegard, the well-connected nun who I corresponded with to schedule this visit, and who runs an online blog for her monastery, who filled me in on some of the more spiritual details. She individually agreed to be filmed and had some really pertinent and well-articulated things to say regarding the mission of these nuns.
I'm Mother Hildegard. I've been on Shaw over 30 years, and this is Coco, one of our trusty sidekicks. Definitely our mission is to be a witness to Christ to the people in the Northwest. And then hospitality, of course, is always in a Benedictine monastery, and we have many, many people of all religions and some with no religion who come seeking something in their life, peace or searching for something spiritual. I think having the people who come, you just see a change. You see a change in the interns who come, people who come even for a weekend, they leave different. And I think part of it is the serenity of the island itself. Just the fact you have to get on a long ferry and that just separates you from the world right there, that long ferry ride. I mean, every monastery seeks to have that quiet. And again, guests come seeking that peace of I wouldn't say escape from the world, but kind of a breath, a pause from the world, to be able to refocus your life. And that's what we hope we can be for people, is kind of like a short stop gas station stop, where you can kind of fuel up and go on with your life in the world.
As an attendee of a school that also functions as a Benedictine monastery, much of what she said was familiar, yet still resonant and inspiring. Mother Hildegard seemed to have an amazing capacity for maintaining her quiet monastic life while staying up to date with the outside world. We weren't allowed to enter every monastic space as guests, but the chapel was available to us, and its combination of Christian themes, Japanese-inspired design and architecture, and impressive open view was pretty remarkable to witness. Bill Gates' family have an island house on Shaw, and reportedly, they will on occasion come to this monastery. After being there myself, I can see why. Even an uber-wealthy retired beneficiary of what used to be the world's largest tech company can probably do with some modest quiet every now and then. Everyone can. And if you're going to shut out the noise around you, this is the place to do it. In our limited time before we had to head back to Seattle-Tacoma Airport, I tried to soak in as much as I could. All of my experiences in the San Juans, particularly the monastery, benefited immensely from shutting out the noise. Trump tweets, daily news, Instagram likes, none of it mattered relative to the awesomeness of the real-world experience I was lucky enough to have. I appreciate that quiet a little more now in my everyday life. I really was tremendously lucky to do this trip. Not everyone is that lucky or has the time to do something like this. It came at a unique time in my life as I was wrapping up 4 years of high school at a place I'd begun to call a second home. I was able to draw parallels to the monastic environment of my school, but in being detached from the community and friends I'd come to know so well, I was able to be a little more contemplative in Washington. I think that everyone should try to find that quiet in their own way. It doesn't have to be a vacation or religiously oriented, but it should involve at least some detachment and reflection. Because when we do find the opportunity to tune out the noise, we start to hear our own mind talk, and that's how we begin to discover ourselves.